Right, what's up YouTube? Back with another video. This is Coffee Talk with Jeff. I'm not on my front porch this time. Nice. All right, so this video is going to be about the Lightning rails. I rode the Lightning, and this is actually a part one because I am going to do a part two. I call this one the part one because I'm going to be going to Race for the Rail here in a couple weeks. So I didn't want to put a lot of time on these rails because I really need to be focusing on the stock rails. So I did a 48-hour binge with the Lightnings so I could do this review. So part two will be a week with the Lightnings, or I might not even take them off. They are fun. So let's start off with just an overview. Right when I put these on, I instantly, it brought the whip back. Do you guys know the whip? Check the whip out. All right, so that's the whip. Shout out to the Float Life because the W's are the whip machine. Got the new Lightning rails. When I put this on, I felt like, whoa, it's, they feel like the W's on the GT, gnarly. So really liked them. So if you're a rider that like literally just rides street and you like surfing and just like flowing, dude, without hesitation. Next thing I did was I took it to my home trail. I live 10 minutes from RCP. That's my home trail here where I live in North Texas. And so what I did there with them is I tried to chase a Strava time. I tried to beat a Strava time with these rails because instantly when I got on the trail, just like the W's, you can keep your speed around corners faster. That's what I get from the W's. Like on some of the windy trails here in Dallas, my W's were the play instead of the tail rails back in the XR days. I could keep my momentum and my speed a lot better on the W's and on the Lightnings as well around the corners. When you're going around sharp corners, toe side, for the most part, I think is a little stronger. The board gets real tippy. And so this rail system, you're low. You can go around those corners with all momentum. I was excited about that. So I went to RCP, which has loop 1, which is the easiest loop. Like, it's just the easiest, flowiest. You can just wide open, right? Now, because of the drought, there are certain areas of RCP that you can't go fast anymore. I was trying to chase these Strava times. Unfortunately, I was not able to do it, but because I was pushing the board so hard, the board did overheat a little early. It overheated at 6.4 miles in. So the loop is probably like 2 miles long or something. So I did go around the loop 3 times.
6 miles into it, we get the overheating sensor. 6 miles into it, we busted this possum.
Maybe it overheated because I was in Apex, and with Apex, maybe the rails, because they're low, are working harder to keep the nose higher maybe. And so that might have been another reason that contributed to overheating. Another thing, it was 101 degrees. It's summer, it's Texas, So I did ride the stock board after these overheated. The stock board did not overheat. In fairness to the Lightning rails, I was not just doing the 3 loops back to back. So there was that variance. I had a pretty decent time with it, but because it was my first time with it, I was unable to beat the Strava times of my GTR that I've set. To give you an idea of where I was time-wise, my best time on this loop is with a GTR setup at 409. When I was working with a Vesk the other day, I actually got a 422. My best time with the rails are 425. Keep in mind, though, that it's a little unfair because this trail is a little harder to ride now because of the drought. So that was the first night on them. I rode them the street, absolutely loved them, brought the whip back. You can really whip these things around. It feels good. Not only does it feel good, they look great. I was getting a lot of compliments on how they looked. Maybe around cornering on the flat with the roots, with the rocks, you do have to just kind of watch it because it is pretty low. So that was day 1. Day 2. So I drove to Arkansas. I was like, dude, I got to go to some hills. I got to go to some mountains. Even though Arkansas don't have the biggest mountains, they're going to offer enough downhill to really give these rails a good test. And so this is where I was able to really see how they perform downhill. And this is also where one situation happened, and I can show you how to fix that situation if it happens. So anyway, I didn't tell you this in the beginning of the video, but basically the cord, the motor cord from the middle of the hub that goes in, you plug into the controller. I feel like from Future Motion's point of view, those all have to be cut the same. But maybe a human is putting them in and gluing them in the motor. And so how far that cord sticks out might vary a little bit here and there. Some people might not have any trouble. Some people might have a really tight cord. In my experience, the cord was pretty tight.
It does pull that cable quite tight. We got Jeff coming in here holding that controller box for me while I get those screws started.
It was definitely really, snug. There wasn't any area for play. It performed well day one where I hit the street, and that evening where I hit the trails with it. And it survived for Bentonville. And then when I went to Tweety Bird, I was getting pretty comfortable with them. I went to the Tweety Bird Trail. I had the crown there on the old Tweety Bird loop, and then I'm right behind Brandon on the newer one, so floaty. And so I was feeling more comfortable with them, and that's when I was like, dude, because I got the crown on Tweety Bird with W's, and so I'm Tweety Bird don't have too many ups. It does have a few ups, and I'll get to that in a second. But for the most part, it's pretty flat and kind of downhill, kind of at an angle. It's pretty easy. And so I was really feeling like the W's, dude. It was like, hell yeah. And so I know on the W's, even though mine was a little nose high, you still have to feather it a little bit on quick ups. You know how you go down and then up real quick? Well, you kind of have to feather it a little bit, or you have to kind of maybe bring your back foot a little bit up. You kind of have to get ready to make a little bit of extra clearance so you don't get ejected when that front of the board hits the uphill because it's too steep, right? And so I did it on Highline twice, and I was having that little feeling where it's maybe being overworked. But when I feathered it, I could still gun up those hills a little bit better, right? Because I felt good. I felt confident about the nose not being too low. And so I put on Highline. And Highline feels so dang amazing, but maybe it doesn't, maybe it does. Maybe it's a little lower. And so those same moves, that same muscle memory I used in those 2 runs prior with Apex, dude, I got ejected so bad on one of those real quick upsends. And I go back to my board, and the board isn't engaging. I turn it off, and I turn it back on, and when it comes back on, it gives me a red light. So first run, I did it. Strava, 4th place. I was going after 1st place right here. Had a pretty good run. Nosedived. Well, I didn't really nosedive. It's just really low in the front, so I clipped on an uphill. And I mean, it was hard. It was really hard. And now it will not turn back on. And I don't know if it's because like the motor plug's hard, too tight, because it keeps giving me this warning about my motor being weird. And so what had happened from that really hard nose hit, it had made the motor cord pop out of the controller. And I haven't said this yet, or I haven't brought this up yet, but Future Motion's little circle thing that holds the cord into the controller, you know, that little locking mechanism, the 2 little teeth on that broke off when this thing came out. And so we took it back. I took it to Nasty's float shop in Bella Vista. They hooked it up. I went over there. We saw the problem was the motor plug came out. We found out the little teeth were not holding on anymore. And so we hot glued it. It worked for 2 runs down Fire Mountain. And so I went down Fire Mountain, and this is more so, I guess, the more downhill part. All right, so I'm about to hit Fire Line. I was feeling good. I had been riding it all morning, and I had some pretty good runs at Tweety Bird. And so when I'm going down Fire Mountain, for the most part, it was really good. It's just when you go down those really extreme berms, there's like 2 or 3 like just really cindy kind of berms that you have to go through. On those particular moments on the trail, you have to feather the board a little bit. I had a better time down Fireline when I went back up with my stock, because when you're on your stock, you got that nose clearance and you really feel confident going super fast in those gnarly situations. With the Lightnings, there's just a little low where you kind of have to back off a little bit. You kind of have to feather it, because staying on the board is better than you being ejected from it. So it is a little low for trail, even downhill. But when maybe custom shaping comes out, this can be modified a little bit. The takeaway from the rails, they're super fun. They feel familiar. They bring you low to the ground. So you really do feel better locked in. When I was going off jumps, when I was coming down, not as high as the stock. So it feels good. Feels kind of like the W's. Shout out to Float Life. You can really keep your momentum around the turns. They look really great. If you're a straight street rider, get them right now. I will say this about the trail riders, and this will be my final thought. And you first went down your first trail ride with the W's, they were a little like, damn, these are kind of hard to ride on the trails. But as I got used to them and I learned how to ride them from riding them every day, those were my fastest rails. And so I think that's the takeaway here. If you take these rails and you ride them every day and you learn the spots that are weak, I think the pros probably outweigh the weak spots. I think if I had a little bit more time with the Lightnings, I would like them a little more. But because Race for the Rails around the corner, I'm going back stock, and the next review will be the part 2 of this, and it'll be a week with the Lightnings versus 48 hours. So would I recommend these rails? Yes. I think overall a win. So that's a video. Like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me your thoughts on the Lightnings. Peace.
This is what I'm thinking, bro, is since this collar is completely sheared off, you don't have any teeth to hold this in place. We need to give you something to make it hold in place. So I'm thinking we just drill a tiny hole right in here on the edge of this plastic ring, and we make a tiny little set screw to hold it in place against that plastic without penetrating any of the electronics.
Do you think it's gonna go into like the copper tube at all and mess anything up, or?
No, we got to make sure it's short enough for that. So this is what I'm looking at. I'm going to use this screw from an XR, and I just have to
screw one time.
get it off here. Just this tiny little guy, and we're just going to shave it down with the Dremel to the exact length that we need it, but we got to measure that. So it has to come in, if it's going to be screwed into here, it has to be short enough to not hit any electronics. We'll get it past that little tooth and install the set screw right there.
Bro, is this like the first custom set, like, is it not wiggling out?
It's not, I can't pull it out.
Oh my god, dude, are you serious? Bro, did you just fix the GT?
It's a short-term solution.
It don't look like a short term, it looks full term.
Well, you got a metal screw on plastic, so as soon as you get a lot of rotations in there, the plastic's going to wear out, and so we'll have to just monitor this.
I knew that. I was testing him. He knows what he's doing.
So just be careful and don't yank it out or take it apart and put it back together.
Well, now that we've done some like stern tugs, can we like maybe unloosen it, put it back up in there, or we're good? We're good. We're good, right?
I can spot that. I can back that up with the hot glue, and we're about to do that.
Dope.